Welcome to the Big Fellas Podcast, where we chop it up about all things past, present, and future about the game of basketball. Where facts, stats, and context reign supreme.
That is blasphemous!
Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. Get ready to learn from players, coaches, and fans from all levels of the game and see the court in a brand new way. And now, fresh off the sidelines, here's your host, John Hartofilis.
What it do, fellas, and welcome to the Big Fellas Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, JH, coming to you from New York City, the mecca of basketball. Today, I'm joined by Bryan Bailey, assistant coach of player development for the Utah Jazz. Bryan and I had a great conversation about his playing career overseas, his work for the Utah Jazz, and what it was like coaching inside the NBA bubble. We've got a good one in store for you today, fellas. Episode number 21, Bryan Bailey, Utah Jazz assistant coach. Hey, Bryan, what's going on?
How you doing, John? Glad to be here with you.
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Nice. Hey, no problem. Glad you reached out. Here to talk some good things about you, with you. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. So just real quick, can you kind of walk us through how you first got introduced to the game and the journey that took you on?
I kind of was introduced to the game at a young age. So I'm originally from New York, grew up in the Bronx. So like when I was younger, me and my brother used to just go to the parks with my dad, like Sunday mornings, just go to the park, watch him play basketball and kind of do stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got introduced to the game. And then gradually just, became a fan and fell in love with the game. So just practice, just me and my brother in our backyard and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it all started.
Awesome. So I'm the assistant freshman coach at Xavier, and I saw that you went to Southside High School right by Hempstead. So when did you go to Southside?
So I moved to, born in the Bronx, grew up in the Bronx, and I moved to Long Island when I was 9. So I started 4th grade in Long Island. And then, I went to the rest of my schooling in Long Island. So I did all my high school years, middle school years in Long Island, went to Southside High School.
Yeah, Southside's not in our league, but I remember we played them our senior year. They're a really good team, and it must have been a lot of fun. And you obviously had a lot of success coming out of Long Island and the high school system there, but you didn't really get any D1 offers out of high school. But you took the risk, went to Bucknell, and were able to walk on, and then had a really successful time there. So can you kind of tell us a little about that and that story? Yeah,
so coming out of high school, I didn't get recruited by any colleges. So I didn't get recruited D1, 2, or 3, which is kind of weird because I was actually pretty successful in high school. I was an all Long Island first team player in Long Island. I didn't get any recruits, any looks, or any scholarships. So when I was looking at schools, I applied to a few schools. Bucknell obviously was one of them, and I applied to Boston U. And I kind of went to these schools and trying to just kind of sell myself to try to go to the school. Bucknell obviously gave me the most money, so it was more affordable. So I ended up going there and kind of just walked into the office, with my recruiting tape, kind of introduced myself. I'm Bryan Bailey. I'm going to be coming to the school, just interested in playing basketball. And they were like, yeah, we have a JV program, you can come. And so once I got to the school, I was just lucky that one of the incoming freshmen decided to transfer. And so they had an open spot in the team. And I actually knew or met the other freshman. His name was Pete Santos. He was the only recruit that came in that year. So I kind of knew him just from a freshman orientation. And we kind of became friends. And so one day they were having just open runs. And he picked me up on his team. And we were playing against, guys on the team. And I ended up doing well. And some of the coaches kind of saw and heard about me. And, that's kind of how I got on the team. So my freshman year really didn't play that much, probably played like maybe 10 games, limited minutes. And, my sophomore year, I ended up starting. And then my junior and senior year, I was first team All Patriot League selections. So that's how the process kind of went.
That's crazy how you go from someone from a walk-on to starting your sophomore year, and now you're in your first team All Patriot League. Your coach must have been really happy. He must have been pretty ecstatic.
No, they were definitely happy, but I was definitely happy myself just, for Coach Flannery and his staff just giving me the opportunity, to play. So without them, I wouldn't have been in that position.
No, of course. So then once you graduated from college, obviously you just had all the success at the collegiate level. You went overseas. You played in a lot of interesting and cool teams there, whether it's in Germany, Cyprus. Can you kind of tell us a little about that and what that was like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, coming out of Bucknell, I really didn't know if I wanted to play professional basketball. So I was actually looking at, working in Manhattan doing computer networking because I had done an internship the past 4 summers down in the city doing computer networking. So coming out of college, I wasn't really sure if I was going to, just get a regular job in the city or try to play basketball. So actually, my college coach, Coach Flannery, had told me about a player, J.R. Holden. So J.R. Holden graduated the year right before I came to Bucknell. And he was overseas and he was playing and he was very successful overseas. Every year he played over there, he won a championship. So Coach Flannery was like, yeah, you should, think about going to play professional basketball overseas. And so that's when I took it up, and I was just like, oh, this is something that I probably could do. And I went to some pro exposure camps and met with some teams. And then I went overseas and I tried out for a few teams and I ended up signing. My first team was in Montenegro. And then after that was in Germany. So that's kind of how the process went. It kind of happened real quick. It wasn't like I knew out throughout my whole, college career that I was going to play professional basketball. It's just, I obviously came down to the last year. It was like, oh yeah, you should really look into this. I think you have opportunity to make money playing basketball. And that's when I decided to do it.
No, of course. And it's obviously a beautiful thing to just travel the world playing basketball and get paid for it too. So
No,
that
for
must have
sure.
been great. Yeah. So after all those years of playing, what made you transition into coaching?
So to be honest, I played 13 years overseas, and then my last year playing was 2015. That's when I stopped, and I came back. And when I first stopped, I didn't go right into coaching. So I was doing basketball player development and strength and conditioning with my brother. So we formed our company. It's called Dime Athletics, and we were outside of Philly. And basically, what we did was we did player development for overseas European players, professional players, high school kids, AAU teams, just for guys to work on their basketball skills and their strength and conditioning. So I did that for about a year and a half. And then I got into coaching just kind of randomly. So the head scout, David Lewin, had randomly texted me. He's the scout for the Celtics, and he found my number. He's like, I heard you retired. And I was just interested if you want to get into coaching. And we have a D-League team, the Maine Red Claws, up in Maine. So he texted me. I was like, yeah, sure, I'm interested. So I went up there, interviewed for their job, and I kind of, spent 3 days with Brad Stevens, his staff, up in Boston, interviewed for the D-League job. I was like the final guy, but I didn't end up getting the job that year. So that kind of sparked my interest to get into coaching. So after I didn't get the job, I went back to doing the player development stuff with my brother. And then I think the following summer, I followed up again. So I just started making contacts with people that I knew. So one guy I contacted was Chris Fleming, who was my coach in Germany for 3 years. And I think at the time he was an assistant with the Nuggets. And, just made some contacts. And then I got into contact with Mike Miller, who was the interim head coach for the New York Knicks. And at the time, he was the D-League head coach for the Westchester Knicks. So I contacted Mike, and we just started talking for a while, just, a few weeks, just getting to know each other, and ended up interviewing with the Westchester Knicks. Allen Houston was the GM. And that was kind of my first job getting into coaching. So that's kind of how the process went. I don't think it was everything, sort of like playing professional basketball. I didn't really know I wanted to get into coaching. That wasn't kind of what I planned to do after I retired. But once I got into it, I loved it.
That's super interesting about how you really weren't sure. You're playing overseas, you're having a great time. You end up retiring, and then you go into the training space. And can you kind of tell us a little bit about Dime Athletics and what you guys do and what the future looks like for you guys?
Yeah, so I got out of Dime. So once I got into coaching, I stopped with Dime Athletics. So basically what we were doing, it was just player development. So we had professional players, mostly top overseas European players that would come home for the summer. And these guys needed somewhere to work out. They wanted to work on their skills just to get ready for the next season, prepare. They wanted to get stronger. So we put them through a whole training program for the summer. And, after that, we had obviously high school kids, and we had AAU teams that we work out and practice with. And I was just trying to get these kids better at their basketball skills. So that was the whole premise behind the company. So once I got into coaching, I had to remove myself from that because coaching obviously is full time, and we don't have a lot of time for other activities.
Of course, and then so when you end up then going to work with Coach Fleming and the Salt Lake City Stars, what was that kind of like going from the Knicks from the Westchester Knicks to the
So
Stars?
Coach Fleming was my coach in Germany. So I didn't work for him. He was coaching with the Nuggets. So he kind of just kind of introduced me to some people. So I was working with Mike Miller, and then I was only at Westchester Knicks for a year. And then after my year with Westchester, I ended up moving to the Salt Lake City Stars. So the head coach at the Salt Lake City Stars at the time was Martin Schiller. And I knew Martin because he was my assistant for 2 years when I played in Germany. And so he brought me with him when he got the head job with the Salt Lake City Stars. So that made me my move from New York to Salt Lake City. And then I was with their team. I was with the Stars for 2 years. And I was at the Stars. Yeah, I was at the Stars for 2 years. And then this is my first year with the Jazz.
Of course, and that whole going from the Stars to the Jazz must have been great for you. So now you're in a player development role there, as opposed to an assistant coaching role. What's the difference in kind of those roles, and also what it's like being with the Jazz?
Our Jazz philosophy is like we don't really differentiate between like assistant coach. So every coach on our staff has an assistant coach title. So my title would be assistant coach / player development. So basically, we don't differentiate between player development and coaching. And then, as an assistant coach, like, as a player development coach, you're basically coaching as well. So, I mean, just main responsibilities is just development of our, roster guys to get these guys better. And other roster guys, just get them better, get them prepared to play in an NBA game. So that's kind of the biggest thing or biggest responsibility I have. I also have like some scouting duties where I work with, other assistant coaches on scouting. So say we're going to play the Washington Wizards or San Antonio Spurs, just helping with the scout. That includes just personnel, just plays defensively, what the Wizards or Spurs like to do.
That's super interesting, and it's great that everyone is able to kind of help in those roles. And kind of so now in this assistant coaching role, what's kind of your relationship with guys like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who are really up and coming stars / superstars in this league, and they've really been making monumental leaps from day one? What's that?
I mean, it's been great. I mean, those guys are class act guys. Donovan, Rudy, they lead by example. Guys that come to the gym every day, they're working hard. They're getting better. So just kind of see their work ethic, even though you kind of look from the outside and you be like, oh, these guys are really good players, but just to kind of see it up close and personal. They're in the gym every day, putting in work, trying to get to where they want to be, and the results speak for themselves when they get out on the court.
Of course, and that's awesome. And kind of, are you obviously you're practicing with them? Do you travel with the team everywhere? Or
yeah, so I
awesome.
travel. So I was down in Orlando with the team 8 weeks down in the bubble. So yeah, everywhere they go, I'm going.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So, what was it kind of like then on March 11th, the day when the NBA kind of shut down, being at that game? And I mean, obviously, I was only watching from Twitter here in New York. You just see all the pictures of them spraying down the seats and the tension of, oh my God, what's gonna happen to the season? What was it like kind of being there firsthand?
I mean, it's kind of a surreal experience, just kind of when they pulled us off the court and we went back to the locker room. So we were, I guess the tip time was either 7 or 7:30, and we were in that locker room till about 1:30, 2 in the morning. They wouldn't let us go, and we all had to get tested for COVID before we would leave, and that was just because of Oklahoma City Department of Health and stuff like that. So it was a little strange just being stuck there and not figuring out what the next move was going to be. Where we're going to go? Can we fly back? Are we allowed to get on the charter? Can we go and, can we find a hotel to stay in?
Yeah, you guys had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, we everything was just so fluid at the moment. It's just like we're kind of just in a holding pattern. It's just weird, getting even like a team dinner, because we're there so long. You get your team dinner, no one could come in the locker room. They just kind of dropped the food at the door of the locker room, and then we had to open the door to get the food in. So, things like that was just really, really strange but surreal.
It's crazy how back then those were unprecedented circumstances, and now it's like commonplace. Like it's like, okay, that's just what the world is now, and it's really wild to think about that. So, what was it like, kind of being in the bubble, obviously for those first few scrimmage games, and then like that must have been insane. I mean, to just be down there.
No, I mean, I think the bubble was definitely an interesting experience also as well. I think the NBA has done a great job of just, keeping all the safety protocols great, and just kind of setting up the whole thing. Logistically, obviously, it was like a big thing just to put on. And, things have gone pretty smoothly. The time I was there, and I'm pretty sure things are going pretty smoothly now. So the first few weeks were kind of, we had so much free time because we weren't playing games. So we were just practicing once a day, and you had a lot of free time, and it's not really that much to do. In the resort, you can go to the pool, you can play some outside games. You can go ride the bike. But once the game started, we were playing every other day. So we didn't really have time to do anything that, things went a lot better.
Of course, I mean, the difference between those first 2 weeks of scrimmage games, and then, I mean, you think you had a week and a half to 2 weeks of regular season games, and then you go right into the playoffs. I mean, that must have been such a shock, just going from just different, all those different stages of games that normally take months and months to complete. So what was that kind of like, just that complete switch around and that day to day?
No, I mean, I think it was a little different. I mean, I think the big thing is that, the NBA kind of prepped guys. So we started in our home market before we went down to Orlando. So we had guys, but we were in the gym. It was usually one player. It was one player, one coach. And that's all you could have on the floor. Coaches had to have masks and gloves on. So all those kind of precautions. So our guys did a great job of just kind of staying in shape and building up to the point where we got to Orlando. So when we got there, guys were kind of in pretty good shape to get going. So we weren't kind of starting from zero. Once we got down to training camp in Orlando, we kind of built up to where we were. And things just hit so quickly. It was like, we had 8 games, and those games were every other day. And I think we had one back-to-back there. And then it was right into the playoffs. So we kind of had to get into the swing of things really quickly and kind of, snap out from being off for I don't know how many months we were, 2-3 months. And then it's like, all right, we're back to a season. But it almost kind of felt like 2 separate seasons, you know what I mean? Because it was such a big break in between games. So we had a season, and then it's like, all right, integrate everybody back again, get everybody on the same page, get our guys going. But our guys did well and adjusted pretty quickly.
Of course, and you guys were playing great. You guys were just, I think, half an inch away from moving on to the second round. So now that you guys are back, what is it kind of like now? Are you guys just completely in off-season mode? Are you guys still practicing? What's that like?
So we have downtime now. Most of our players are probably out of the market and stuff like that. So, I know the teams that were not in the bubble, they're doing a little mini camp. So the teams that didn't make the playoffs and were not down in Orlando. So I think they're doing like a 2 or 3 week mini camp. But right now we're off. Don't know when we're going to huddle back together, but still doing like small projects, still watching basketball on a daily basis, just kind of do some personal development on my own. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Of course. And I mean, this your whole story of just going from a high school player that, doesn't get any looks for college, dominating college, going and playing overseas for years and years, right? When most people would think that maybe even if he got to this point, maybe he won't last that long. You play for years, and then you end up coaching. Now you're coaching the NBA. You're down in the bubble with just like the most like. You have to be so high up in the game of basketball just to be down there. So that must have been, I mean, just your journey's been remarkable. And it's so awesome to talk about someone that's been there and experienced something that I've been watching on TV religiously for the past 3 months. I can't remember the last time I've spent a day without watching the game. So I mean, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I think our listeners are going to take a lot out of this episode.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Big Fellas Podcast. Check us out on all major social media platforms at Big Fellas Pod to join the chop up. You can also listen to us on every podcast platform on the planet. Stay tuned for the next episode, Big Fellas.